Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self. If we could be cured of our slave mentality that was indoctrinated into us during slavery, we would realize that just as the white man can do these things for himself and his kind, we can get together in unity and harmony and do the same thing for ourselves and our kind.
Think about it.
Welcome to another episode of the Blueprint for Black Power podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brother Dre. With me, I got my brother Rashad Sekou and my other brother Tazamak Zarai, aka Kenyatta Sharif. How we doing today?
All right,
Doing well.
Doing great.
All right. Last week, this is actually a continuation of the episode that we did last week. Was with part one, when we were talking about competent power, and we also talked a little bit about legitimate power, but this week we're going to go a little more into legitimate power and explain exactly what it was. But just to give a little recap, we understand that competent power is when you give somebody power over you because they have more knowledge or skill than you do. So you automatically just assume that they have this power position over you. We used examples like teachers, doctors, scientists, and things like that, because they have a particular knowledge or skill set and they know things that we don't know. Then we're kind of put in an inferior position where we have to rely on people based on their knowledge and their skill. And we also talked about the importance for more Black people to get in these positions of power, not even necessarily in the white man's establishment, but just building their own establishment by having these skill sets themselves, so they can create their own governments, their own monetary systems, their own educational programs, and things of that sort. But we also, and we jumped a little bit into it last week when we talked about legitimate power and what it was. But just to recap on legitimate power is different than competent power in that with legitimate power, you're giving somebody consent to have power over you. So some of the examples that we use and what are pretty easy to understand is, for example, employment. When you sign on to a job, you're consenting to a particular structure, a particular system, where you have a supervisor or manager or what have you, and they have authority over you, of course, because they have to instruct you on how to do the job, the do's and the don'ts. But this is a system of legitimate authority where within that context, you're allowing somebody to have authority over you so that, a job can get done. And of course, you can get your financial reward in the form of a paycheck. But just to open it up, I wanted to read the paragraph itself. And this is, again, we're reading from the Blueprint from Black Power. We're still in chapter 1. I'm on page 17, the bottom part of it, where Dr. Amos Wilson gives his explanation of legitimate authority. And he says, legitimate authority refers to a power relation in which the power holder possesses and acknowledge right, in which the power holder possesses and acknowledge right to command and the subject an acknowledged obligation to obey. So this is a consensual relationship where I've consented to giving this person authority over me, again, within the context of whatever situation you're in, whether it be employment or another example would be military, where you sign on to the military, you put yourself under a contract where you've dedicated, at least 4 years of your life to this program, and you understand there's a hierarchy of command. You don't come in there as a general just barking out your own rules and doing what you want. You understand that you start off at the very bottom and you have to listen to the instructions of your quote unquote superiors, whether you like it or not, right? Because in these situations, people oftentimes find themselves doing things that ordinarily they would not want to do, but they consent to them anyway. You know what I mean? And there was one part that I wanted to bring out in the second paragraph where he's quoting wrong, and he says that submission to legitimate authority is widely regarded as voluntary and based on consent rather than on coercion, and yet at the same time, it is felt to be mandatory or obligatory. So again, it's voluntary, right? Because you signed up for the military or you signed up to the job, right? You went there, you filled out the application, you went through your interview process or whatever. So the scenario is voluntary, but at the same time, it feels like you're being obligated because again, same thing with a job. You oftentimes get told to do things that you may not want to do. You know what I mean? They may say we got to work late or you got to go over here and do this. Or we got to, you got a mandatory day that you have to come in. You may not agree with the setup, but you still complied because that you knew that was what you were signing up for when you began. Same thing with the military. You may not want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do all these, strenuous drills and everything, but that's what you signed up for. You knew what you were getting into.
It's made out to look like you knew what you were getting into.
Well, I mean, and it's in the fun, that's true, because sometimes people like with the military, you may not understand what's going on in the higher echelons of the program. You know what I mean? Absolutely. But you knew you were going to be commanded. You knew you were going to have to take orders and you were going to have to be subject to those commands. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, but you're absolutely right as far as, and you see it too with a lot of soldiers nowadays kind of coming out and saying and speaking out against the government. I was watching one video about a soldier that got dishonorably discharged because he began to speak out about what's going on in Afghanistan. Yeah. This guy had been in the military for I think 17 years, and he's like, he killed people. He saw friends and comrades of his die, and a lot of these soldiers are very upset about what's going on because they never understood that this thing was all about money. They thought that we were actually fighting for freedom, and they were trying to protect the country and protect their families and all this stuff. And now it's coming out that, oh, this was all about politics and money. And you have some soldiers that are very disgruntled and upset about this. But if you speak out about it, because again, you signed up for that situation. So now this guy speaks out about it and he gets dishonorably discharged because that's against the rules. And he can't go to court and fight it because that's what you signed up for. Right. You knew that you weren't supposed to speak out against those are confidential matters that you're not supposed to speak to the public about. So
absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's stuff like that. That's that legitimate authority. And it goes also into the politics. That's what voting is all about, right? When you vote somebody into a position of authority, you're saying, okay, I am agreeing for you to be my representative, to speak on my behalf. And oftentimes you might elect a politician and you may not agree with everything that person says, but because you voted for them, you accept the rules and regulations and the commands and things that trickle down from these positions of power because you agreed to be a part of that system. You know what I'm saying? And you have people, again, going with politicians. Sometimes people will say stuff like, well, yeah, I may not agree with everything that this person is saying, but it's the lesser of two evils. I'd rather have this person as my representative rather than this person over here as my representative or what have you. But no one, again, ever questions the system itself. But again, I just want to really kind of open up with just explaining what legitimate power is and how it works. It is very deceptive in the fact that you consent to it. You sign on to it. And you brought out a good point, Kenyatta. You sign on to it without having a good idea of what it's all about. You don't know all the details of it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you just want to play your part in being a good American. You feel as though, you know what I mean, your country. Once again, when we're talking about legitimate, and I'm going to use Black people and white people for an example because the white people, tend to represent the power structure. Well, the power structure has set up something for us, set up a system, for us all to comply to. And by us complying to, it might not be in our best interest. You see what I'm saying? To where, once again, just like how you're talking about to military, or use the police system for an example. Okay. When a Black man becomes a cop and certain things go on in this institution where, you know, a white cop kills an unarmed black man. What? So that black man can honestly know that he can see that for himself, that that was no accident at all. But he's not going to go against this power structure that, you know what I'm saying, he's been assigned to. They said it was an accident, so then it's an accident.
That's it.
You accept what the powers that be has told you. When you know it was wrong. You're a man who can think for yourself, so you can see that there's a wrong here. It doesn't make complete sense. It doesn't fit together like the two puzzle pieces should. Right. However, you're not going to go against the powers that be once they said it was an accident.
That is so true. And that is a big example of the police force, because they have that tight brotherhood where, like you're saying, even if you know what happened is wrong, you don't speak against that. You know, you really do not speak against that. That goes into that social pressure, you know what I mean? But it's also, you bought into that system. And that is a lot of what the whole police academy is about, is getting you psychologically prepared and instruct, you know, it's no different than boot camp. Boot camp is all about conditioning the mind to take orders and don't question authority. The police academy is the same thing, getting you programmed to know how to take authority or to take orders and don't question authority.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's a good scenario where you have a situation where an innocent black kid gets killed, but because you're in that structure where you know, hey, look, whatever they say, oh, they said that they were innocent, then that's what they said. The cops were innocent. I have nothing to say about that. You know,
the one that tends to ask questions to the power structure, that shows doubt. They don't want that. They are looking for they're the one, like it says right here, you know what I mean? The ones, you know what I'm saying, the African Americans that accept and obey. Well, what you're saying right there is the one that consents to this, that'll say, well, you ask no questions at all. This is what you signed on to. This is the way it's structured. And that's what you do. You just follow orders. And if you notice, the ones who just follow orders, those are the ones who really move up in rank.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Those are the ones who move up in rank. Those who ask questions, you show doubt, you don't move up. You know,
those are your disciplinary problems. The ones that ask questions and question authority, those become the ones that get ousted. You know, those are your rebels. They don't like them, but you're right. The ones that put their head down and just follow the rules, those are the ones that become your
and that's not just military or police academy. That's everything. That's even at your job. Yeah. You know? Yeah. You ask questions, you know what I'm saying? You're that one who just seems to be somewhat rebellious. You know, when you're just asking questions. But because the others, they don't question it, they don't say anything, this was the assignment and they go and do it.
And think about this. I'm sorry, go ahead, Rashad.
I'm sorry, but it's because it's legit. Right. Because you consented to it. You filled out the application. Just once again, like and I'm gonna let you get in there, Rashad, but like you were saying earlier about you know, there's some things that you consent to, and next thing you know, here it is, you have to now work on Saturdays. Right. You know what I mean? Your child has baseball games or whatever, but you can't attend to that because this comes first. You consented to it.
Is it?
So when we tell you you're fired, the one that really looks wrong, it's you, not us, not the company, not the power.
You didn't follow the rules.
You didn't follow the rules. Now you go, Rashad. Sorry, bro.
No, you're good. I just was going to go back to, it starts at the young age, because again, our young people are really asking questions, and they're trying to, what people would say, buck the system. But when they're in school and they're saying, you know, well, why do I need to do this, mama? You know,
bam.
Yes, because he's asking questions, she's asking questions, and the daughter's just like, you know what? Why I need to learn this? How is this going to benefit me in the real world? We used to always ask that question when we were sitting in school, and nobody could tell us. So again, it starts at a young age. So by the time you get to a job, you're already programmed most of the people to not ask any questions. You just do the job, because again, they understand that we got to do this from a young age. So you can't ask a question in school or you get ousted. Okay, so then you got an 8-year-old who has all these questions, and the teacher says, "Stop asking questions, young man."
Boom.
And
Right.
usually that teacher
Boom.
is a white woman or a white man. But again, you see the subliminal things. Now, guess what? This authority figure is telling an 8-year-old, "Stop asking questions." And he really has a question. So guess what? Now he doesn't talk anymore in school.
Boom.
Right. And
That-
also, I just want to add to that. Another biggie is I want to use for an example are informants.
Mhm.
Now, informants tend to believe, and I'm not just talking about informants that are working for the police, although I am talking about them as well. But I mean, informants are used in all kinds of ways. But when I'm talking about that, an informant tends to believe that he's doing his job. This is what he signed on for. You know what I mean? To
Mhm.
where, regardless of if a group of African Americans are trying to do something uplifting towards Black, well, if you're an informant to interrogate what's going on here, you just feel as though you're doing your job.
Right.
You don't feel as though you're doing any type of wrong. You know
Right.
what I mean? You tend to jump on that and say, "I was just doing my job."
Right.
You know what I mean?
You consented to that authority of those high up, whether it was through coercion because they had something on you, or as we recently discovered, it's because they paying you very well.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And you're getting that money, and you know that if you don't consent, then there's going to be consequences. You're right. They desensitize themselves from the situation and say, "Look, this is beyond me anyway. If it's not me, if I'm not the informant, they're just going to get somebody else to do." You know what I'm saying? So that becomes justifications. That's a good point. I also too wanted to jump back to that educational system, because that is key. That is so key as well. Getting them young, getting people young, and that even plays into the informant thing, because we learn at a young age how
That's why
to
I
take
brought the
authority. Exactly, and
That's
don't
what made me
question.
think of it.
Boom.
That's what made me
Exactly.
think of it.
Boom. You learn these behaviors, and we carry them with us all throughout our lives. And think about it: any person that would the person that would act up in class and ask the questions or say, "I don't want to do this," that was the rebel. That was the one. You're going to the principal's office. Let's get you away from everybody else, because we don't want your behavior to influence the rest of the classroom. We don't want, you know what I'm saying?
And if you notice, if that's so true, if you notice, because before that child gets kicked out of the class, before that whole incident jumped off, it just started out with him having a question against what the teacher just said.
Yep.
You feel what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
also, he just wanted his question answered, but you just went on and gave him anything. Like, I'm just supposed to go on and accept that? Nah, it doesn't make sense. So he still questions it. And once he keeps questioning it, now, you know what I mean, you're aggravating. You need to get out of, you're disturbing my class.
Exactly. Or even if it's
you just started out with a question.
Or even if it's just complaining against the work, like you were saying before, like, why am I doing this? You know what I mean?
Right.
What this doesn't even make sense. And sometimes the teachers can't provide a legitimate answer as to why you're doing it. It's just because I said so, because this is the program, this is the curriculum. And it's like, a kid is trying to cry out, but you see what happens is they kind of beat that out of us. Years and years of this conditioning where you grow up as if you were a rebellious kid, you grow up thinking something's wrong with you. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with you. You just were against the system itself. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then if you were that kid that always followed the rules, you grow up thinking, this is the way that I'm supposed to be. I've always been a straight A student.
Right.
You know, all through, I've always done my work the best. And you go into the workforce with that same attitude where you just know how to take instructions and not question authority.
Well,
your program.
I mean, think about it. Here's a kid who's 11 or 12, 6th or 7th grade. And he finally asks the question, because every morning we doing the same thing. have to stand up, put his right hand over his heart and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mhm.
So we just what's this really, what do I really have to do about it? Regardless if you're asking your parents or your teacher, the question comes up.
Right.
And then the explanation that is given to that child at times, it doesn't make sense to him because he doesn't see the world. I don't see the world like that. I don't see equality. You know what I mean? I'm looking at the TV with my parents and why these police officers killing these unarmed Black people?
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? But you want me to go into class tomorrow, put my hand or my right hand on my heart and say the Pledge of Allegiance. He's not getting it. So
Right.
now, because he's questioning, you know what I'm saying? You want to say question the system, you know what I mean? Regardless if the structure is at home or at school or wherever, guess what? He's rebellious. They see him as being rebellious now because you're not compliant.
Exactly. And so they beat it out of you. Some way or somehow.
Some
they
form of
just-
either going to beat
they-
out or manipulate you to see it from their point of view.
Exactly.
Oh, you know what I
Right.
mean? And then you
Right.
consent. And then now, once again, you accept and you obey.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and that's why the school system is so because we're giving our children to this system. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? And when it starts so young, I mean, we're talking about as young as 4 years old, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
5 years old, even younger than that, if we're
Right.
talking about pre-K.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, once again, it's the legitimacy of this whole thing is because everything you're saying, but it's all based on the education and who's going to argue against that.
Exactly. Don't you want your child to be educated? Don't
Thank
you
you.
want your child to grow up and, get a nice job and make good
In
money?
the end, exactly. In the end, you would look like you're in the wrong.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. As they always do with people that want to homeschool their kids or pull them away from the curriculum. Again, as we talked about before in another podcast, they can come and take your kids from you if you're not following that curriculum. Even if you're homeschooling, you have to make sure you follow the curriculum.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
When you guys are talking about this, if you go to page 21, okay, in that middle paragraph where it starts with the word however.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, if you go down to the second to last sentence, Brother Amos Wilson explains it right there. He says, this is true even where relatively open process of selection are at work. Once the selection is performed by an education system, which is given the task of preparing children differently, okay, differentially for their respective future roles.
Absolutely.
So what he's saying right there is you're sending white children and Black children to the same school, but they're not being educated the same way because, again, the white child is coming out learning the history that we learned, saying, guess what? I should be dominating the world. I should be owning the world. I should own companies. The Black child is sitting in that same class, in the same history class, and guess what he's saying or she's saying? Okay, well, I was a slave, so I need to get out of here and get a job.
Bam. And that
they're in the same exact school, but they're being educated totally different. And Brother Amos Wilson puts it right in our face.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the difference that you see with a lot of your public schools versus private schools or boarding schools, and why a lot of wealthy white people send their kids off to board. I mean, other than the fact they don't want to take care of the kids, but they send them off to boarding school because in a lot of these boarding schools, that is what they're trained for. I remember this is years ago, I was like 20 years old, and I used to work at this juvenile detention center, but one of my supervisors was also a wedding singer. And he got to sing at this this event, this wedding that took place at, I guess the convention center or hall that was at this boarding school. And it was a very wealthy boarding school in Maine somewhere, like way out in the outskirts of Maine or what have you. But he was very impressed by just the look of the school or what have you. So he started talking with, I believe, the superintendent and just asking him questions about the school itself. And the guy had told him, everybody that goes to the school is trained to be either a politician, a mayor, president, doctor, lawyer, nothing else. That's all we train for. You know what I mean? They're trained to be your next, generals and military. This is what we train them for. And it started from like kindergarten all the way up to high school.
Call that a prestigious school.
Exactly. And parents are spending a lot of money, but that's why they do that, because they're bringing these kids up to be in these higher positions. Whereas in the public schools, we're being trained to be employees,
That's it.
worker ants. That's what you're trained to do. You know what I mean? But your bosses and you know what I mean, these guys in these higher positions, they're going to a totally different, like he's saying here, they're getting a totally different education than you. You know what I mean? They're getting a more, advanced education. They're learning how to think critically, whereas you're just learning how to take orders.
Yes.
You know?
And the system isn't lying to you, because once again, with the wording, their job is only to give you the basic fundamental that you need to go out in the world. That's it. Basic fundamental education.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You get the basics, and that's it. I mean, what school, what public school really teaches anything about business? None.
Right.
You don't really hear that word business until you hit, community college or some university,
I remember my kids being in school and taking like business education classes. And I would ask them like, what are you guys learning? Oh, we're learning how to write an email. We're learning how to surf the web.
Right.
You're a teenager. You know how to surf the web better than the teachers do.
Well,
What is writing an email?
Right.
Because once again, they're supposed to give you the basics.
Yeah.
Think about when, even when I guess this puts my age on the table, but it goes when they first started putting computers inside the school.
Yeah, that's a long time ago, Ken.
Right. But here it is. Here it is. You've been doing this for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Now you're in the 9th grade or such, and you're still teaching you how to press A. Get A to move your finger over to the next key. It's like you only taught the basics on any of this.
Right.
And that's as far as it's going to go.
And that's the setup, because we think, oh, I'm learning business education, or you don't learn nothing about business at all. You know what I mean? Even if you go 4 years in a college, you hardly learn anything about how to really be an entrepreneur. You know what I'm saying? You learn how to take orders. We'll teach you how to be a manager. You know what I mean? But you don't always learn what it takes to be an entrepreneur, how to be a hustler. You know what I'm saying? In fact, those things are oftentimes discouraged. You know what I mean? But that goes back to us legitimizing the system. You got to question the system. You got to question the foundation. How did this all start? This system is not legitimate. You had something.
I just want to make one more comment.
Yeah.
It goes back to, once again, when we're all young and we're starting out in school, from kindergarten, 1st grade, we're all taught right then and there how you can be leaders, and you can be anything you want to be in your lifetime. You want to reach for that goal, you just have to reach for it.
Right.
As you get older, what teacher ever tells you that anymore? They just stick to the basics. Well, when we're talking about public schools, you just stick to the basics. To where the point, this person is now a senior getting ready to graduate, and the only thing that they know is what they're doing now. The same way they have a part-time after school job, they're just going to now go work full-time. That's it.
That's it, man.
That's all I wanted to add to that.
No, that's it. And that's a good point again, because going back to those boarding schools and stuff like that, we really don't realize that when you talk about, again, these higher echelons of these higher positions, a lot of these kids are groomed from the time that they're young. These presidents, they've been groomed. They come from wealthy families, the majority of them. They've been groomed from the time that they were young to be in these positions of power. You're not getting the same education. You're getting a very, like you said, Kenyatta, the basics. You know what I mean? A very rudimentary, just enough for you to get out there in the world and know how to get a job. Now, if you turn out to be an entrepreneur, or you turn out to, work your way up to, being the CEO of a company after 30 years of dedication, then good for you. They can point at you and see, look, this guy pulled himself up from the bootstraps.
Right.
But the vast majority of people are never that's not gonna happen. You're just gonna be a daggone employee for the rest of your life. And hopefully you retire with a decent pension so you can live off of that and stay quiet.
Absolutely.
So we
Absolutely.
gotta start questioning the system itself. But I wanted to go back, talking again about voting, and I know there was a point that you wanted to bring out, Kenyatta, just when we were talking about the politics of it all. Because that is fundamental, where we vote these politicians into office and stuff like that, and how we give this system power by giving these people power over us, and then how they play us as a Black population, because we start to think that things have changed and the system is fair because we have some Black people that are in these positions of power. You know what I mean? Because we had a president that's Black, and now we have a vice president that is Black. You know what I mean? This causes us to believe that we have some say. You know what I mean? And he had said something interesting, going back to page 18, the last paragraph. Where it says, to a significant degree, African Americans accept and obey predominant white American power and its authorities because they agree with the rules of their establishment and expression as defined by white Americans, share with white Americans the moral, legal, and other values and perspectives which justify them, and to some extent limited in recent origin, because the Blacks have been permitted by white Americans to participate in political and social processes by which white power is given legitimacy. So when you sign on to these systems, when you get these positions of power, presidents and politicians and all these things, you are essentially legitimizing that system, you know what I mean, and agreeing and consenting to it. But this system, as we keep talking about, has been designed to disempower you. You know what I mean? So yeah, it seems like, okay, I'm the new president. I'm this I got this position of power. And that seems like a good thing, like, especially when we're talking about the older generation, they're looking at people that now have these positions that they didn't see people in when they were young. Like, think about it. When Obama got elected president, Black people lost their mind. They were in the streets crying. People were tearing up. They were crying. They were like, oh my God, I never thought I'd see the day. You know what I mean? But again, nobody questioned the system. You know what I mean? Like we were talking about before, president doesn't have any power. You know what I mean? He's really just an employee that's just doing what has already been established by the system. But I know you had wanted to say something on that too, Kenyatta.
Yeah,
just about them picking the right people or something like that.
Once again, when we're talking about how this whole thing is designed, this legitimacy, how it's designed for us to feel as though we've been accepted. By the power structure, that we're all on the same page, we're on the same team, we vote, and we believe in the same democracy, and in this democracy, I have the freedom to vote just like you have the freedom to vote. Well, once again, the way that whole thing is set up, because regardless if this Black man is a Democrat or a Republican, the issues that we're basically dealing with don't pertain to us at all. Everything that we're doing is based on the structure that the structure that the white power structure has put together. Exactly. So regardless of what the outcome is, it's still designed to work in favor of the white power structure. You see, so putting Obama into office, or put any Black person into office, basically you are just a Black face for the white concept.
That's it.
And that's all it comes down to. And that's what Brother Amos is basically saying here, and it's hard for it. We can't fight it because once again, like Obama, we helped put him into office.
Right.
You know what I mean? So through legitimacy, he spoke, you're going to do this, make changes, better people. You know what I mean? So we run with it, we go with it. Right. But the whole story, like you were saying earlier, we don't understand the system. So you don't understand that through this system, this is working out for the white power shit. That's why so many white people voted for Obama, because they understand the system. And they knew that this man is going to work in our favor. I don't know what these black people over here shouting about, all happy and crying for in the streets.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because because you basically you did get what you wanted. You want, yeah, we got a black president, we're free. Look at this. Yeah, we did get what we wanted. We wanted the black face. And they got but see, we got the black face, they got the white concept.
And think about the vulnerable position that put us in as black people, because we were so excited to have that black face. Still to this day, black people will listen to whatever Obama and Michelle say. You know what I mean? That's why do you think that they got them as the forerunners for black people to get vaccinated? You know what I mean? Because they know how faithful black people are to the Obamas. And as we talked about before, because Obama is a master rhetorician, you know what I mean? It's hard not to like the guy, because he has a lot of charisma and he knows how to present ideas in a way that's easy for the public to understand, or at least they think it's easy to understand, but they're able to use him as a tool to manipulate and get black people to do what they ordinarily would not do, you know what I mean, if another person had presented it. You know what I'm saying? So again, he's kind of used as a tool. And here's another point that I just want to read this one point that Amos had brought out in the 19th page, the beginning of the top of the page there. He says their customary traditional participation in the American white political economic process and system is tantamount to the legitimation of their own oppression and to the consensual insurance of their own powerlessness.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? You're disempowering yourself by complying with this system. You know what I mean? We don't understand how dangerous voting is.
Right.
You know? And I know, and I say that understanding because we understand a lot of people, of course, get offended when we talk against voting, because of the fact that we understand our ancestors had to go through so much and give up their lives so that they had the right, so that we had the right to vote. But we also understand that when our ancestors were doing that, they were under the impression that the voting system was going to be fair. And that is, as we can see 50 years later, that's not the case. You know what I mean? We're just putting we're as Amos Wilson brings out here, we're disempowering ourselves by giving power to this system that was never set up in our favor to begin with. You know what I'm saying?
But we agree, right? But we agree with this system, because you could walk around and ask a lot of black people, how do you feel about the system? A lot of them are, you know what I mean, as far as democracy goes and asking if you're free, they agree with the system. You know what I mean? They believe as though as long as I'm not doing nothing wrong or committing any crime, you know what I'm saying? They don't understand being black is a crime, that, you know what I mean, you can go to prison or be killed, whatever. You know, it's hard for you to understand that a system that you were taught to believe that this system was made to work for you and not against you. So it's hard to talk about to a lot of black people that are seeing that cops, you know, the majority of cops, you know, do bad things. You know, some people want to say, well, there's a few bad apples out there. You know, for a few, there's so many accidental killings going on. It's hard for me to understand that.
Right. And going on that, Kenyatta, because again, people aren't going back to the foundation of the police system. Like we know, the police started out as slave catchers. So if the foundation of the system is corrupt, you can't, you know, just build a new thing on top of it. The foundation is poor. If you got a poor foundation, the whole building is unsound. You know what I mean? So 100 years later, the whole police force is still corrupt because of the way that it was established from the get-go. You know what I'm saying?
See, but now what you just said right there, it brings me to page 20.
Okay.
When Brother Amos is saying right here in the beginning part of the beginning of the new paragraph. It says, our questioning of the legitimacy of white power, particularly white American power, does not amount to a call for the overthrow of the American government. However, it does not amount to a call for African Americans to critically examine the origin and the function of the rules, morals, values, customary attitudes and behaviors, common perspective of the folk way they have been convinced to accept as the result of the white American physical and coercive imposition, ideological propaganda and conditioning procedure, and so on. But what I bring this out for, because what the brother is basically saying right here, once again, I loved how he used the word the origins and the functions of it. Once again, how you just brought out
Right.
how where the police system starts back right after, from the origins of slavery, being slave catchers,
Mm-hmm.
and the functions of how this has worked throughout the system. And then you will see that this whole thing has been a setup from the giddy up against the black man, the black people, period.
So true.
Yes.
People do not question the system. We're not, you can't, in order for you to effectively create any sort of change, you have to understand what the causes are. Where did this thing begin? How did this start? Because if you don't understand how something began, and that's why it's important to understand history. Sankofa, as we talk about, you can't understand the future if you don't know about your past. How did this start? What's the fundamentals? You know what I mean? Like,
But
even,
see-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go on, finish. I'm sorry.
No, because you're gonna make a point. I was gonna jump back. I don't want to go off. I don't want to want you to lose your point.
Well, it just because once again, you was talking about knowing history. But see, once again, if you really study America's history, they don't live by any of these rules and morals and values and customary attitude. None of their history is based on that. You stole, raped, and robbed for everything. You killed and murdered for everything that you have. And now because you have taken it all, you have taken everything from the native to the and everything from the black man to now you want to say, well, now that I have wrote rules and regulations to all this, I'll let you guys, you know what I'm saying? I don't even be able to say have some of it. Be able to you know what I'm saying, indulge in it a bit, you know, to a limit to I'm sorry, I get too excited when I talk about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? But to the point where, you know, they don't live by any of this that they have written. I mean, whatever values, whatever morals, whatever rules, they live by none of it until it is set up the way they want it to be.
Exactly.
Now it's against the law. Now it's against the law for me to go and murder someone. But before it was okay, you know what I'm saying? And you paid me money to scalp that Indian. Okay, I got $5 for running around scalping heads, which you blamed on the Indians for being scalpers. But you know what I mean? Here it is. But now you got laws that it's against the law to kill people, which everyone understands, which we all understand because that's how it was supposed to always be. Mm-hmm. But your history, your past was not based on any of that.
Right.
But now because you've now taken all the land and it's yours, now it's not right. Now that even that white man can't just go and scalp that Indian anymore. Why? Don't do that. We own everything. We control it all. You don't have to do that anymore. Now I'll lock you up for that. Boom. You see what I'm saying? It was okay before.
Right.
Very true. Very true.
Exactly. And that's why the system is illegitimate. Because it was established on murder, it was established on slavery, it was wrong from the get-go. You can't just ignore all that and say, okay, now we're going to start afresh, you know what I mean? But that's like you're saying, that's how nations do it. They go, well, that's how the European does it. He goes in, he wipes out everybody, he enslaves people to build up his establishment. And then once it's established, he says, okay, I'm going to police the world and tell people what to do and what not to do. You know what I mean? Oh, like you're saying, killing somebody is immoral. You know what I mean? Enslaving people. Why would you do such a thing? That's so cruel. You know what I mean? Like now they talk about human trafficking. Like, oh my God, how can some people do such a thing? You know how many people you human trafficked? You know what I mean? You built this country on trafficking and kidnapping and murder. You know what I'm saying?
Seriously.
So why are we as Black people giving this system power when from the very foundation it was illegitimate? It's not.
Because once again, we go back to education. See, education has taught you, matter of fact, it doesn't even teach you that even really happened, that's something you would have to hear throughout the grapevines and be like, what? And go and check it out for yourself, the majority of it.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of things we don't find out until we get older. And at that point, we have so many other distractions between my job, my wife, and my kids. I can't even focus on it like that.
Exactly. And that's what this opposition
from the education. It all starts from the education, because once again, you get me from kindergarten to 15, anything to do with slavery, anything else, I'm telling you, I'm not going to pay that much attention to it. How can I? I've grown up and I need to make my place in the world.
And think about it, man. That's what all this opposition to the critical race theory is all about. You know what I'm saying? They don't want these kids learning the true history. They don't want them learning how Europeans murdered, raped, robbed, lied their way into power. You know what I'm saying? That'll mess up the minds of these little white kids.
But when you get older because you're gonna hear it at some point
eventually,
in your life.
Exactly.
You're gonna hear about it, regardless if you're white or you're Black. You're gonna hear it about it at some point in your life. But when you hear about it, the setup they've got, well, that was so long ago. You know what I mean? And that wasn't me. That was, you know what I'm saying? Those people back then, I would have never done anything like that to you. You know what I mean? I love everybody. Right. And that's the concept. And that's the concept that, we as people go through in America, we either, and Brother Amos brought that out. I forget what page it's on, but I know it on the top of my head. We all go in this world now where we're living colorblind or racial neutral. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So because it's not, either you believe in it, and if you don't really believe in it, you don't have time to pay attention to it, because once again, you're trying to, you know what I'm saying, make it in life by now. I mean, so it's been set up for you to believe a certain kind of way that those things, because if you leave the history out of it, okay, leave history out, leave the past out of it, everything does look colorblind. It does look racial neutral.
Exactly.
Okay?
Right.
The only thing that hurts America is their past. That's it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. But that's the key, to now keep you colorblind, to keep everything neutral and say, hey, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That was so long ago, we changed.
And as more and more time goes by, the less and less the generations are going to pay any attention to it.
Exactly.
Today, our children are talking, well, that's 200 and some years ago. But what did we get to be 500 years ago? You're going to pay less and less and less attention.
It becomes a blip. Right.
Come on, how can you still think like that? Come on. I mean, we've had a Black president, and we got a female Black vice president now. Come on, we're going places.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, because that is the mentality, man. That is, and even especially with the older generation, our elders are even saying that, like, why are you guys harping on that? That's so long ago. Look at all that we've accomplished. But we're looking at faces. Oh, Obama, Kamala Harris. We're not looking at Black family wealth. You know what I mean? This is the thing that Umar Johnson be talking about. Like, it's a stagnant line. You can just go look at the statistics.
For Black people to say that I never thought I would live to see a Black president, then you must know that there's something wrong with the system.
Boom.
You must know
it. Wow.
If you literally said, I never thought I would live to see a Black president, then you know that there's something wrong with the system. That's all day.
Yes.
To think that, you know what I mean? Like, wow, white people would never let that happen. You know what I mean? Because Black people would never stop that.
Right.
Come on.
And think about that.
Something's wrong.
That's a deeply rooted belief. Yes. And we still go ahead with the system. We know We're like, man, I never thought that would happen. Then why are you affiliated with the system? Why are you
There you
complying with the system?
There you go. There you
You
go.
know what I mean?
Because legitimately, you have accepted and obeyed, you know what I'm saying, the white structure and how this whole system works. And you feel like you're breaking doors. You know what I mean? Because you got this
Right.
black face in there. So now we done broke the doors wide open. Seriously?
And check this out. I'm pretty sure you guys had this highlighted because this is going right along with everything we're saying. Going to page 20. In the
Mhm.
middle of page 20, right after what you read, Kay,
Yeah, it is.
where it says uncritical acceptance of Eurocentric rules, morals, customs, and so on by African Americans hides from them the fact that despite the norms and values they share with white Americans, in which serve to legitimate the American social, political, economic system, white Americans possess a preponderant and dangerous power advantage over them.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And Brother Amos wrote this before there was even a black president.
Think about that. This is
Think about
19
that.
in the 90s when he wrote this.
Okay? Think about that.
Boom.
Think about that. That's
Boom.
what, when I read that, that's what I saw, like, wow. Okay, this is before there was even a black president. So they knew, you know what I'm saying, the advantage of by putting a black man in office, what it would do for them.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Oh.
And it's that uncritical acceptance.
Yes.
Why aren't you criticizing? Why are you just saying this is the way it is? This is the way it's always been. This is the way it has to be. Why don't you criticize the system? You know what I mean? Why aren't you saying, well, wait a minute, can this be done differently? Can we as a black community do something differently? As we talk about all the time, why aren't black people talking about setting up their own party if you want to play politics with the white man? Why do you have to go Democrat? Why do you have to go Republican? Why don't you create your own party? Better yet, why don't you create your own government? But we don't see this as being as a possibility.
Yeah, once again, everything that you're just saying, it just makes me reflect back to education.
Boom. That's why it's key.
Why all those whys that you just said, it's because of education. It's the way you've been educated. You know? We
got to get our children back. We got to get our children back, man.
Absolutely.
We got to stop sending our kids to the slaughter, man. And I'm guilty of it. You know, I was the same way. I put my kids through the daggone system or what have you. We got to stop that because you're right, Kenyatta. That's where they get. You know what I mean?
You know, to where you accept it. If any politician, any white politician if he's trying to win an election, he's got to go talk to a group of black people. You always know there's two things he's always going to put in his speech. You'll hear Martin Luther King and you'll hear Abraham Lincoln, because that's all you've been taught since you've been educated. Now throughout history, now you'll hear Obama. Oh yeah, and you'll hear you'll still hear Martin Luther King and Abraham Lincoln. You know what I'm saying? But you got another name to add to it now, and it makes it look, oh, we really moved up now. But it just goes to show you that once again, everything that you had just said, it refers back to education, because this is what you've been taught. Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, and that's what you roll with. So when that politician or whoever's speaking on that, that's what you know. So that's what your brain tickles to, like, okay, I like what he's saying there, but you didn't even really get what he said.
Exactly. And Obama
said names that you're familiar with because that's what you learned throughout your education.
Exactly. And think about it, Obama is particularly dangerous because even with Abraham and Martin Luther King, they both got assassinated. You know what I mean? They both got assassinated. They were years ago, but Obama's recent. And Obama's that carrot that they can always dangle in front of you. Like, look, you can be a black president too. It's happened before.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that, again, keeps you complicit with the system, keeps you compliant. You know what I'm saying? Where you're like, you know, everything you guys are talking about is crap because things have changed. You know what I mean? And I can be a part of the system, yada, yada. I can get in this position of power, yada, yada, yada. But Yeah, it is crazy. I know we don't want to go overboard. We want to wrap it up a little bit, but I did want to hit on a couple last points in page 22. It's not all doom and gloom. You know what I mean? And I do like the fact that when Amos Wilson is bringing out these ways that this power is being used against us, he does also provide like a solution or a positive outlook to it. And this is what I wanted to read on page 22, the top of the first paragraph. It says, these rules and ideological justifications must be directly challenged or subverted by Blacks in order to enhance and exercise a Black power counter to white power. We've got to challenge the system. You got to challenge it. And as we talk about all the time, we got to challenge it. You have to start with things like boycotting the vote. You know what I mean? Get away from the voting system. Come together and use your collective power to boycott the vote. You know what I mean? And demand what you want. You know what I'm saying? We're so used to, oh no, we're just going to vote. And when we don't get what we want, we're just going to wait until the next election. And when we don't get what we want, we'll just wait till the next election. And they're never going to give you what you want. It's not until you say, you know what, screw this, we're not playing your game anymore, that they'll say, oh, damn, we have to change the rules or what have you. But even if you were able to get to that point where you can collectively come together and affect the vote by saying, we're not going to vote until you meet our demands, you then begin to realize that you don't need the system at all. Nope. You can create your own thing. You know what I mean? Because as we keep talking about, there is no fixing America. It's corrupt from the foundation. You know what I'm saying? There is no making America a better place. It's corrupt from the foundation. You have to completely rebuild it. That's the only solution.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, well, I agree with you totally. But to them, as long as they can keep it under the archive, as long as they can keep you busy, keep you distracted, here's a gadget to you know what I mean? Here's a new iPhone, something to make you not even look at the past, then they're good, because they know that you can't change the past. Everyone knows that. You can't change it. So I can only try and keep it hidden from you as long as I can.
Exactly.
You know, and once again, like I said, as long as the generations go on and on and on, the longer they go, the more it's buried.
Yeah.
Like you said before, brother, they whitewash it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's it.
Exactly. That's another way of hiding it. That's also hiding it. Doesn't matter if you bury it or you clean it up and make it sound a different kind of way, whitewash it. Yes, it's all designed to make you feel as though that was then, this is now. We're better white people. We love you guys.
Right. We admit our ancestors, they were so wrong. I know my great grandfather owned slaves and I would never do such a thing. Whereas today they enslaved the whole society, whites, blacks, Asians, anybody that comes in.
Yeah, but in their mind, after slavery, haven't we all gotten along? As long as we accepted your white power structure, we have.
Exactly.
And Brother Amos Wilson makes that point because he says the only reason you're good now is because you don't have to knock anybody in the head like your ancestors did.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And because because also like Brother Amos was saying before, because if you look at all this, and as long as we accept this type of legitimacy way of living, the way the power structure has set up, as long as we abide by this, we're giving crumbs off the table. And those crumbs that are given off the table, they're the way they're divvied out and limited out to where it's just enough for you to survive.
Right.
But even with that little bit that they give us, if we go against it, if we all get together and truly go against it, just like Brother Amos said on page 7, just like he said with the establishment, whereas rewards is given us, will also, if necessary, to maintain its control, kill us.
Yeah.
Just like he said on page 7. You know what I mean? So if we don't abide by these rules and regulations and submit the way they want us to, we will kill you.
Exactly.
Let us never forget that we will kill you.
And that applies to everybody. That applies to any white, black,
Anybody.
Asian, anybody that goes against the system, you're at risk of being killed. They're not going to jeopardize their control for anyone.
Right.
So yeah, that threat applies to all people. Yeah.
All people. But when you went to page 22 and you brought out that top part right there, on the latter part, I wanted to say on those the last two sentences.
There we go.
Where it says, and hopefully, this brings some enlightenment to Black people, because I don't want them to just totally think that we're totally jacked. You know what I mean? We once we get a better understanding, once we start bringing ourselves out of the clouds, we understand that we still hold on to a lot of power. We're just feeling powerless because we have the yoke around our neck at the moment mentally.
Right.
But right here in this last part, it says Blacks must develop means of overcoming whites' social, political, and social economic advantages, regardless of the racial status quo.
Right. Kay,
Yes.
right. Can we read the sentence, a couple of sentences right above that? Because I like how they both tie in, where it says a contemporary
race-neutral society, in terms of its neutrality alone, would in no way resolve the problem of gross inequalities between whites and Blacks. In fact, such a society would function only to maintain, if not in any actuality, advance them.
Enhance them.
Sorry, enhance them. I'm sorry. I mean, I kind of got that all mixed up.
No, because it goes along with what we were talking about as far as race neutrality. That's not going to even the level, the playing field. They've got 300 something years of a financial political advantage over Black people. So just saying, okay, we're fair, we love you now, and we believe in all equality, that doesn't level out the playing field. You know what I mean? They still are in a position where they have a superior education, where they have control of all of these high-powered positions, where they're making decisions that control the world. We're not equals. They're still over us in that regards. But then I like going, like you're saying, where he closes out, like you just said, and just to read it again, Blacks must develop means of overcoming white social, political, and social economic advantages, regardless of the racial status quo. So it don't mean, who cares that, okay, you like me now, or now you're saying that, there's no difference between Black or white or what have you. Let's talk about leveling the social, economic, and social political field. They're never going to do that. They're never going to give you equal power in economics and in politics.
And they're never going to give that. And a lot of Black people don't understand that.
Right.
You think that you're going to make your way into this, but no, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Anything that you want, you have to take. And history has showed us that. Now, when I read that last part, where it brought me back to a few moments ago when we were talking about Obama. Now, me personally, the way I use this, and the reason why I bring up Obama, because I show my daughter images of Barack Obama, only because I want to put that image of a Black face in her head. You see what I'm saying? Now we have to educate our children and everything else, you know what I'm saying, and give them a better understanding of certain kind of things. But for right now, I just want her to understand that Black image. You know what I'm saying? We grew up all with white images in our head. You've got George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln. You know what I mean? So with this generation, I want to teach my daughter, 7, getting ready to turn 8, to understand that Black image first.
Right.
You see? And then from there, with educating, because you just can't leave it alone just like that, but with education, giving her understanding, and feeling more pride and more Black.
Right. And understanding that we can be leaders.
Right.
But rather than being leaders of somebody else's system, we can become leaders of our own systems and our own organizations.
I'm gonna
Boom.
use this status quo to the best of my advantage, and you know what I'm saying, raising my children.
That's it. That's it. So yeah, man, that about, I know we probably went over the time or what have you, but legitimate power, there was so much meat there, and I don't even think we touched on all the meat.
Yeah, man.
But there's so much meat there because, again, it being consensual makes it a very effective form of power, because we're giving over our power to someone else and allowing them to kind of control and rule and dictate how we're going to live our lives. So we do highly recommend, we're going to close it up with there, unless you brothers had another point that y'all wanted to make out.
Well, I just want people to also to understand that power, we've all reflected on it as being a bad thing, but power can be a good thing. And once we get more into understanding what power is, you know, then we will take that and use it to our advantage. You know, that's when we will take back the vote, we will boycott the vote and start and become more powerful instead of being powerless, because it's all mental. Exactly. It's nothing financial, or it's not even nothing physical. It's all mental.
All mind control. All mind control. And that's why it's nonstop programming all day long for really all the citizens. Because in order for you as a government to maintain control and power, you know what I mean? And really beyond the government, we're talking about the oligarchy. In order for them to maintain their control and power, you have to have control over the way that people think. You know what I mean? That is extremely important. And that's why they're always bombarding us with all types of programming. But in which I think we're going to get into that next week with manipulation as power, which should be one of the last. I know we're getting close to the end of chapter 1. But yeah. Did you have something you wanted to bring out, Rashad?
Just challenge the system, like you've been saying, brother.
Challenge the system. Right on, right on. So we're gonna close it up. Once again, I do have a reading of both sections. I broke them down into 2 parts, but they will be included at the end of this video and also at the end of part 1. We highly recommend that you watch the first part of this section as well. If you do not have the book, as we always say, please go out and get it. The name of the book is The Blueprint for Black Power, written by the late Dr. Amos Wilson. And you can get the book at AfricanWorldsInfosystems.com, which is the website that is still owned by the Wilson family. So we highly recommend that you go out and get that book. And next week, we will be covering manipulation as power. So please tune in. There'll be a lot of information for us to go over on that as well. Until next time, peace and love.
Peace.
Shalom.
Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves. In what way? A knowledge of self.